So today I will take the class on the eyeball. So this eyeball one, that is the first part. Okay. So today I will tell some structures of the eyeball. Okay. Now, the eyeball, that is what type of organ it is? It is a special sensory organ through which we can see. Okay, if eyeball is not there, we cannot see anything in our environment, isn't it? And that eyeball, where it is situated? It is situated in a bony orbit. Already the class has been taken by Dr. Sara, I think, isn't it? Okay, so that orbit that is situated inside our head, isn't it? So, can you see the orbit in that diagram? Now, what is the shape of the orbit? It is pyramidal in shape, isn't it? And that pyramid means that it has a base which is outside, that is the opening of the orbit, and behind there is the apex. Through the apex there is an opening, and through that opening, that is the optic canal, the optic nerve enters. And the eyeball, that is the largest structure which is present inside the orbit, that is more anteriorly it is present, and the eyeball is connected with the optic nerve. Via the optic nerve it is connected to the brain, isn't it? And the orbit, already you know that orbit is formed by many bones which form its roof, floor, lateral wall, medial wall, all these things. And in the orbit you can see that there are some fissures are there, through that the nerves and the vessels, they are coming. So other than this eyeball and that nerves and vessels, there are also some muscles are present. They are known as the extraocular muscles. So these extraocular muscles, they are attached to the eyeball, and they move the eyeball in various directions. Okay, so and also there are fat and fascia, they are present inside the bony orbit. Okay, now these are the contents of the orbit. I have already told you the muscles are present, fats are present, fascia are present, blood vessels are present, then the nerves are present, and also a gland or the apparatus is present, that is the lacrimal gland or the lacrimal apparatus, that is also present inside the eyeball, isn't it? Okay, now I am going to the next slide. So that eyeball, it is now that eyeball, it is covered by 3 layers that everybody knows. Even the school boys, they know about that. That is the sclera, choroid, and the retina. Now, what is Tennant's capsule? That is the facial layer surrounding the sclera. It forms a socket. It forms a socket for the eyeball. So it is known as Tennant's fascia or Tennant's capsule. And you can see the what is that? That is the eyeball muscles. The eyeball muscles you can see on both sides. One side is the medial rectus muscle, another side is the lateral rectus muscle. And these 2 muscles, they pass through the fat surrounding the orbit, and then they are attached to the Tennant's capsule, isn't it? And when they pierce the Tennant's capsule to be attached to the sclera, that is the outer covering, about 6 millimeter away behind the sclerocorneal junction. So there, the Tennant's capsule form a reflection over the tendons of the extraocular muscles, and of the medial rectus muscle, they are this reflection, it is attached to the lacrimal bone, that is on the medial side, and for the lateral rectus muscle, it is attached to the zygomatic bone, that is on the lateral side. Okay, now this 2 ligaments are known as the check ligament. There is another ligament is formed by this Tennant's capsule surrounding the inferior rectus and the inferior oblique muscle, and that is known as the suspensory ligament of the eyeball, and it is present, that is below the eyeball at the inferior aspect of the eyeball, enclosing the inferior oblique and the inferior rectus. So this is the suspensory ligament of eyeball, or it is also known as Lockwood's ligament. Lockwood's ligament. Okay, and between the Tennant's capsule and the sclera, there is a space that is known as the Tennant's space or episcleral space, and that space, it is occupied by some loose irregular tissue, and also when the optic nerve, it is coming from behind, it pierces it passes through this Tennant space. Also the tendons of the extraocular muscle, they pass through the Tennant space. Also the vessels and nerve, they also pass through this Tennant space. That is the dimensions of the adult eyeball. Okay, now here you can see the transverse diameter of the eyeball. The eyeball is circular, isn't it? But it is not fully circular, because it has an anterior sphere and a posterior sphere. So it is spherical, not circular, it is spherical. Two-dimensional, it is circular. Three-dimensional, it is spherical. So it is anterior sphere, and that is a smaller sphere, and that is 1/5 or the 1/6 of the eyeball, and another sphere that is more larger, that is, it will form the 5/6 or of the eyeball. Okay, but the anterior sphere is more prominent than the posterior sphere. So it is a sphere, so it has a anterior diameter, it has a posterior diameter, it has a vertical diameter, and it has an equator between equator also. Okay, now this anterior diameter already I have written. You can see that the anteroposterior diameter extending from the anterior pole to the posterior pole. So anterior pole, that is the midpoint on the anterior convexity, and the posterior pole of the eyeball, that is on the midpoint of the posterior convexity. In between them, there is the anteroposterior diameter, which is about 2.4 centimeter or 24 millimeter. Similarly, the transverse diameter will be the 2.5 millimeter and centimeter, 25 millimeter, and the vertical diameter is 23.5 millimeter. Okay, and the equator, that is the largest distance between the anterior pole and the posterior pole. Okay, so that is the equator, external equator, it is written. Okay, then so these are the dimensions of the eyeball. Now the anteroposterior length is also known as the optic axis. Now there is another axis that is known as the visual axis. Now where is the visual axis? Now this is the eyeball, and on the retina there is an yellow colored area that is situated 3 millimeter away from the optic disc, and on that area the fovea is present, and that is the where the cone cells, that is the photoreceptor cells, are maximum, and here the image is very clear. So from that point to the distant point, what we are seeing, that is, if we can see the blackboard or the whiteboard, then from there the light is coming, that ray of light. So that axis up to the fovea is known as the optic axis. Okay, and that is not optic axis, that is the visual axis. The anteroposterior diameter is the optic axis. In between them there is an angle, and there are so many angles are present, but I have written here only one angle between the optic axis and the visual axis, that is the angle alpha. Okay. Now, in our, that is about 2.4 millimeter, the anteroposterior diameter, but if the anteroposterior diameter is more, if it is 2.9 millimeter, then the image will not form on the retina, it will form before the retina, and that then we cannot see the distant object very clearly, and to correct it, we use the biconvex lens. It is known as myopia. for the distant vision. And another condition is known as the hypermetropia. So hypermetropia, here the anteroposterior diameter is short, that is about 2 centimeter. Okay, and in that condition the image will form beyond the retina, and to correct it we have to use the convex lens. There are many other refractive errors there. Can you tell them what are they? I have one refractive errors that is known as presbyopia, that occurs with ages. Okay, I cannot see the near objects very clearly. That is more or less like the hypermetropia. Okay, I have to use the convex lens to correct, to see the near objects or to see the letters. Okay, similarly there are another refractive errors that is known as astigmatism. When you will go to the eye department of the eye, you will know about all these things very detailed. Okay, now come to the segments and the chambers of the eye. Now this eye, it can be divided into 2 segments, the anterior segment and posterior segment by the lens. So in front of the lens there is the anterior segment, and it is limited by the cornea anteriorly, and behind the lens is the posterior segment. Now both these segments contain some fluid. In the anterior segment, the fluid that is the aqueous humor, and in the posterior segment, aqueous humor, it is more liquid, more fluid, and it is plasma like substance. Okay, but it is very very transparent, but the vitreous body that is behind the lens is also very transparent, but it is gel like substance, Now the anterior segment is again divided into 2 chambers, the anterior chamber and the posterior chamber, by the iris. So between the cornea and the iris there is the anterior chamber, and between the iris, ciliary body and the lens, that is the posterior chamber. So behind the lens is the posterior chamber, isn't it? Or behind the iris is the posterior chamber. In both these chambers the aqueous humor is present. Now who is producing the aqueous humor? That is the part of the middle layer. The part of the middle layer is known as the ciliary body. The ciliary body that will form the aqueous humor, and that aqueous humor is formed in the posterior chamber first, and then it will enter to the anterior chamber through the pupil. That is an aperture in the iris. It is just like a circular diaphragm with an aperture in the middle. Now, so what are the functions of the eye? Everybody knows that it receives the light. It receives the light, and that light, when it enters into the eye, it is refracted by different media. The first refractive media is the cornea, then the aqueous humor, then the lens, and then the vitreous body. And ultimately, it will form an image over the retina. And that visual information, it is passed through these optic nerve fibers to the brain, and that reach to the visual area of the brain, and there it is processed, and then after its processing we can see the objects surrounding us, isn't it? Okay, then so these are the functions of the eye. Now what is that? Now the layers of the eyeball, already you know about the layers of the eyeball, that is the sclera, retina, and the choroid. Now the cornea is the continuation of the sclera. Okay, and the cornea is a transparent object. Okay, and the sclera and corneal junction, it is known as the limbus. And you can see in the eye the exposed part of the sclera. So what is the color of the sclera? It is white, isn't it? But can you see any black sclera? Have you seen black sclera? Have you seen?
No.
No? Acha, you see the horse's sclera. Okay, then you will get the sclera is back. Also, in lizards also, if you can see the eyes of the lizard, then you will get the black sclera. Okay, but in human, it is white. In most of the animal, it is white. But in the child, it is the sclera. Its sclera is a fibrous layer, but it is thin in the child and it is slightly translucent. Okay, and but but as age advances, it becomes yellow in color because of this deposition of fat. And this is the sclera. It is pierced posteriorly, you can see, by the optic nerve. In that area, the sclera is also pierced by some arteries, posterior ciliary arteries. And here the sclera is thin. And you can see what are the thickness of the sclera. So this sclera, sorry, here. So here you can see that the optic nerve is piercing the posterior-medial aspect of the sclera. And in that area, the sclera is very thin. And here there are many, that area is known as sclera cribrosi. Okay, lamina cribrosa scleri. Lamina cribrosa scleri. And the sclera also gives attachment to the rectus muscle. Now the outer surface of the sclera is smooth, but the inner surface of the sclera, that is close to the choroid, and that space is known as the perichoroidal space, or the lamina fusca. Perichoroidal space or lamina fusca, that is FUSCA. Okay, and in the lamina fusca nowadays, if any drugs has to be introduced for the choroid and the retina, that is, then they can give in that space, that is the perichoroidal or suprachoroidal space. That is the lamina fusca. One can give the injection in that area, or one can give the drug, introduce the drug in that space. Usually it was given before in vitreous body, but nowadays it is given in that space because the efficacy is more if we give the drugs in that space. Okay. Now, any other things about the sclera? The sclerocorneal junction, what is it called? The sclerocorneal junction, that is called the limbus. And the exposed part of the sclera, the part which we can see through in our eye, that part is covered with conjunctiva, isn't it? And the corneal epithelium, the cornea is not covered with conjunctiva, but the corneal epithelium is continuous with the conjunctival epithelium. And the cornea is a transparent structure, and it has no blood supply. It has no blood supply. So how does it get its nutrition? It will get its nutrition from the tear and also from the aqueous humor. Okay. Acha. Now that sclera, when there is intraocular pressure is increased, you can see the sclera is pierced not only by the optic nerve but also by some veins. That veins are known as the varicose veins. They are present on the choroid, that is the deeper layer, and these veins, they converge and they form the varicose vein. Varicose vein. These veins are known as varicose vein. So there are 4 or 5 varicose veins. They are pierced. They are giving attachment to the muscles. That is the extraocular muscles. Also the ciliary arteries, you can see just surrounding the optic nerve, the ciliary arteries, the short posterior ciliary vessels and nerve, they are piercing the sclera. Also in the upper part, you can see the anterior ciliary artery is going and it is piercing. and that is the anterior ciliary vessel. So all these things, they are piercing the sclera. Now in any case, the intraocular pressure is increased. Then what will happen? That intraocular pressure posteriorly, it will cause that is outbulging of the sclera. So that outbulging of the sclera can be seen. So in some condition, particularly in glaucoma, where the aqueous humor is more, or in any other condition where the intraocular pressure is increased, in that position there will be bulging out of the sclera outside near at the optic disc. That area where the optic nerve enters, that area is also known as the optic disc. In the retina it is present, that optic disc you can see. Okay. So now another thing that is present in the sclera, at the sclerocorneal junction, the fibers of the sclera, they become loose and they will form the trabeculae. And inside this trabeculae, there is an in transverse section you can see a canal, and that canal actually a circular canal, but in cross section you can see that that canal is oval in shape, and that canal may not be a single canal, but there may be more than one canals may be present. These are known as the Schlemm's canal. Now why this canal is present? This canal, it drains the aqueous humor. It drains the aqueous humor. The aqueous humor which is present in the anterior chamber and the posterior chamber, and it will be drained into the Schlemm's canal. And then where it will go? It will go to the veins. That is the varicose veins or the ciliary veins. So that will go. The ciliary veins will ultimately form the varicose vein. So they will go to this. The fluid in the Schlemm's canal will ultimately drain into the vein of the eyeball. Okay. So that is the canal of Schlemm. Now, come to the choroid. The choroid is, not the choroid, it is known as the middle layer, and it is a vascular layer, and it is known as uveal tract, and it has got three parts, that is the choroid, ciliary body, and the iris. Choroid, ciliary body, and the iris. The choroid is separated from the sclera. I have already told you that is the suprachoroid space, or that is perichoroidal space, or lamina fusca. Okay. Similarly, choroid is connected with the retina by a membrane that is known as the Brooks membrane or lamina vitrea. Okay, and that uveal tract is divided into choroid, ciliary body, and iris. Okay. So it is a vascular, so all these vessels are present in the choroid. Now in the choroid, though I have written the retina very prominently, but actually I want to tell you about the choroid, what are the layers present in the choroid. There are two layers. One is towards the sclera, where the large vessels are present, that is known as the external vascular layer. Here the veins and arteries are present. Also in this layer, the nerves are also present. And another deeper layer towards the retina, that is known as the choriocapillary layer, where the capillaries are present and they form a network. Okay, and these blood vessels, they supply the retina, the sclera, the other parts of the eyeball. Okay, so there are two layers, external vascular and the choriocapillary layers in the choroid. So in the external vascular layer, the large vessels are present, also the pigment cells are present, also the nerves are present. Okay. So here you can see the external vascular layer. You can see the varicose veins. They are the veins, they converge and they form the vortices, and the veins which are coming from that vortices, that is known as the varicose veins. Okay, and the nerves are also you can see. But where are the vessels, the arteries? The arteries are deep to the venous layer. Okay, that is the varicose deep to them. There are the arteries. They form the ciliary artery, the branches, so they are deep to this venous layer. Okay, so that is the external vascular layer. Also in this layer, the pigments are present. Okay, now you can see the function, the ciliary body comes to the ciliary body. So ciliary body, it is the continuation of the choroid. It is triangular in shape. The apex is towards the choroid and the base is towards the iris. And the ciliary body, it has a function, that is, it suspends the lens. That means it keeps the lens in its position. It suspends, hangs the lens in the eyeball, and it keeps its position. Also, it can changes the shape of the lens. Also, it can that is, it changes the size of the lens. Okay, and the ciliary body, it forms the aqueous humor. Mainly it produces aqueous humor. Also it may produce the that is the glycosaminoglycans of the vitreous humor. Okay, so these are the functions of the ciliary body. Now, what are the parts of the ciliary body? The ciliary body, before going to that part, the ciliary body, it is continuous with the choroid, and in that part, it is also continuous with the retina. How come? Because there the retina becomes very thin. Okay, and the retina, only one layer will pass, that is internal aspect of the ciliary body. So in that region is has a scalloped margin, and that scalloped margin is known as ora serrata. Okay. Ciliary body, it is continuous with choroid and the retina by a margin, and that margin is known as the ora serrata. That is a scalloped margin. Okay.
Okay.
Got it? So the ciliary body is continuous with the choroid and with the retina by a scalloped margin, and that scalloped margin is known as ora serrata. Okay. Now you come to the parts of the ciliary body. So parts of the ciliary body, there are two parts. One is the pars plicata, another is the pars plana. And in that ciliary body, there are the pars plana is continuous with the choroid. Another pars plicata, that is that will give rise to the suspensory ligament, which are attached to the lens. Okay, and there are ciliary muscles are present, ciliary vessels are present, ciliary nerves are present. Okay, now the parts of the ciliary body, that is the, you can see the pars plicata, from where the that is what is that? The suspensory ligaments will come from that, and that will be attached to the periphery of the lens, that is the pars plicata, and the pars plana, it is continuous with the choroid. Now, if we see the histology of the ciliary body, we can see that the ciliary muscles so this is the pars plicata and pars plana, and this is the histology. Now here you can see the ciliary muscles, this is sclera, and this is the ciliary muscles are there. This is the epithelium of the ciliary body. Now this epithelium of the ciliary body, there are two layers. One is the pigmented layer, that is a cuboidal epithelium. Another is the columnar layer, and that is the non-pigmented layer. And that non-pigmented layer, that will form what they will form? They will form the aqueous humor, and they may also produce the glycosaminoglycan of the vitreous humor. Okay. Now here also you can see that the ciliary muscles. So the ciliary muscles, that is a coronal section of the eye, and the ciliary muscles, there are various types of ciliary muscles. These are the longitudinal muscle fiber, these are the circular muscle fiber. This is the pars plicata, here will be the epithelium. Okay. And in between them, there are some radial fibers are also present in the ciliary muscles. So ciliary muscles are of three types. One is the meridional fiber or longitudinal fibers, another is the circular fibers, another they have not shown, that is the radial fibers or oblique fibers. Okay. So these are the parts of the ciliary muscles. Okay. Then now these ciliary muscles, when they contract, when the ciliary muscles contract, then the suspensory ligaments which are attached to the ciliary processes, that will be loose. So when they will be loose, then the lens becomes more convex. The lens become more convex, and that is the accommodation reflex. During accommodation reflex, the lens become more convex and the pupil is constricted, and the medial rectus, they will make the eye to converge, make the eyes to converge. So that is the accommodation reflex for the near object. And when this ciliary muscle is relaxed, then what will happen? The suspensory ligament will be stretched and the lens become flat. Okay, that is the convexity of the lens becomes less, and that is the changes when we see the distant object. So these are the actions of the ciliary muscles. Okay. And these ciliary muscles, they forms the ciliary processes, and that ciliary processes in the periphery, that will form the ridges. Okay, so that is known as the pars plicatum. And the suspensory ligaments are also known as the zonular fibers. So here the zonular fibers, and that zonular fibers are also known as circle of Zinn. Circle of Zinn. Okay, the zonule, not the circle, that is the zonule of Zinn. Z-I-double-N. So these zonular fibers, in between the suspensory ligaments, there are spaces. Here also the aqueous humor is present. And there is a canal across the equator of the lens, that is known as the Petit canal or canal of Petit. This is the actions I have already told. Now the ciliary muscles, they are mainly supplied by the parasympathetic nerve. So from where this parasympathetic nerve will come? There is a nucleus for the third nerve in the midbrain, that is known as the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. This Edinger-Westphal nucleus will give the parasympathetic fibers that will cause the muscular contraction. These fibers will come to the ciliary ganglion, you have already been told, and that ciliary ganglion is present inside the orbit, and here these fibers will come along with the oculomotor nerve and they will relay there. And after relaying, the postganglionic fibers that will pass through the short ciliary nerves and they will supply the ciliary muscles. And there is also sympathetic supply is also there, but that sympathetic supply may be inhibitory or its action is not clearly known. But the parasympathetic fibers, that is the motor fibers, they will cause, because the ciliary muscles are not the skeletal muscles, these are the smooth muscles. So their contraction is caused by the autonomic fibers, and that is the parasympathetic fibers. And that parasympathetic fibers comes as a postganglionic fibers of the ciliary ganglion. Now the iris. Now can you tell me who is iris? Who is Iris? She is a goddess of rainbow. You know that? Did you know that? Iris no? Iris is goddess of rainbow. Okay, I can show you that goddess. Oh, so she is the goddess of rainbow. Because rainbow has many colors, iris has also many colors. What are the colors? We have brown iris, isn't it? And the blue iris, green iris, and black iris. No, it is not black. It is always deep brown. Okay, not black. Our eyes are not black. Okay, it is deep brown. You see your iris. Okay. Okay, so this, because of this color, hazel color, what is that? I don't know. golden and green and red, kya kya sab. Now these iris are because of this different color, it is known as the iris. That is the goddess of iris is a goddess of rainbow is the iris. Okay. But in our eye, the iris is a circular diaphragm with a pupil at the center. Our pupil is circular, and you can see the who is that? It is a tiger, isn't it? Tiger. Or in cat also you can see, in lion also you can see that the vertical pupil is there. And in the lower picture you can see that it is a horse. In ass also, in goat also, maybe in cows, I am not saying that cows, these are the horizontal pupil. And in our eye, that is a rounded pupil. In dog, what type of pupil is there?
Dog rounded people.
Rounded. Oh, rounded. Okay. So this is a circular diaphragm with an aperture at the center, and that is known as the iris. And iris has a anterior surface and the posterior surface. Iris is not only the circular, because just behind it is the lens. So lens will push it, and there is an anterior curvature. So you can tell that it is a cone-shaped or cone-shaped diaphragm. Okay, with a central aperture. Acha. Now this iris has an anterior surface and posterior surface. There are epithelium. Anterior surface have no epithelium, but the posterior surface has epithelium, and in between them there will be the muscle, the sphincter pupillae muscle and the dilated pupillae muscle. So sphincter pupillae muscle, that will be surrounding the pupil, and the dilated pupillae muscle is away. So when the sphincter pupillae muscle contract, the pupil will be smaller. The normal dimension of the pupil is about 3 to 4 millimeter, isn't it? 3 to 4 millimeter. And but when it is constricted, then it may be 1 millimeter only. When it is dilated, then it is maybe 8 millimeter. And when it is constricted, then it is known as miosis. And when it is dilated, it is known as mydriasis. Yeah. The muscles of the iris are two, that is the circular muscle fibers or sphincter pupillae, and the radial muscle fibers or the dilated pupillae. Normal diameter of the pupil is 3 to 4 millimeter. The diameter varies from 1 to 8 millimeter. When the pupil is dilated, it is known as mydriasis. When the pupil is constricted, it is known as miosis. Then the nerve supply. This sphincter pupillae muscle, that is supplied just like the ciliary muscle, that is the parasympathetic nerve. You can see that that in the midbrain, this is the brain stem here. Now in the midbrain there is a regular westphal nucleus. From there the parasympathetic fibers come through the oculomotor nerve, enters into the eye and relate to the ciliary ganglia, and then they supply the sphincter pupillae muscle through the short ciliary nerves. Okay. And this is the ophthalmic nerve. There is a nasociliary nerve. The nasociliary nerve, through this nasociliary nerve, the long posterior ciliary nerves, they will supply the dilated pupillae. So sphincter pupillae is supplied by the short ciliary nerve, and long ciliary nerves that will supply the dilated pupillae. The dilated pupillae is also supplied by the sympathetic fibers. So sympathetic fibers comes from the superior cervical ganglion, and these are already postganglionic because in the superior cervical ganglion they will relay, and then they form a plexus surrounding the carotid artery, and then they enter into the nasociliary nerve, and from there they will go to the where they will go? They will go to the ciliary ganglion. Here they will not relay because they have already relayed here. So they will not relay here, but through the short ciliary nerve they will supply the dilated pupillae. So these are the nerve supply of the iris muscle. Okay. Then what is this? The retina. That is the innermost layer, the sensory layers of the retina or nervous layer of the eyeball. That is known as the retina. And the eye, which receives the light, which passes through the various diffractive media, it is refracted, and that forms a image on the retina. Okay. Acha, now can you tell me that in some animals there are in the dark there are some bright light can be seen in their eye, they glare, their eyes glare. Have you seen that glare in some animals? Dogs,
Yes, ma'am.
cats,
In
even
canines. Canines.
canines, even in herbivore also I have seen, in the cow also I have seen. Yeah,
Rabbit.
yes, but yeah, I have seen in the cow also. But why it occurs? Anybody knows?
Because the light is not absorbed that much, it reflects.
Yes. Why? Because there are some specialized cells which are present in the choroid. That cells are known as tapetum. And when in dark, when the dim light is coming, this light is not absorbed. Okay, they are reflected. Instead of absorbing, they are reflected. But in our eyes, this tapetum is not present. Because if the light is reflected, then we cannot see the object very clearly. Reflected light, that there will be some scattered vision will be there. But in case of that carnivorous, because they usually hunt at night, so the dim light when enters, they were reflected by these specialized cells known as tapetum. And because of this reflection, their light is glare at night. And it may be they can show the aggression, or it can stimulate that retinal receptor more, and so they can see more clearly in the dark than us. Okay, so that is the tapetum, which is present in some animals but not in us. So we were in the retina, so come to the retina. So retina, when that light it enters, it is refracted and it forms an image. So our eye is just like a camera, isn't it? And all the lights from peripheral light cannot enter. Why? Because there is the iris is present, so the peripheral light cannot enter. There will be an image will be formed on the retina, and that will not be formed on the optic disc, but because where the optic disc is present, the nerves are coming out from the eyeball, so there no photoreceptor cells are present. But in the other parts of the retina, the photoreceptor cells are present. They are rods and cones. So these cells are present, particularly at the posterior pole, which is 3 millimeter. So, okay, where are we? That the retina, isn't it? Now you can see that here in the posterior part, where I have written the optic part, that is this part. This part, there are how many layers are present in the retina? 10 layers are present in the retina. 10 layers are present in the retina. Okay, so these 10 layers are present only into the posterior part of the eyeball, posterior part of the eyeball. But here the retina is present or not? The retina is present. That is known as the ciliary or iridial part of the retina. Here the ciliary body is present, and here these 10 layers are not present. Only one layer is present. So what are the layers of the retina? The most outer layer, which is continuous with the choroid, that is known as the pigmented layer of the retina. And that pigmented layer is continuous in the ciliary part of the retina. So that ciliary or iridial part of the retina is the non-nervous part of the retina. Whereas the optic part of the retina, which contains the 10 layers, and that is known as the nervous layer of the retina. So at the junction of the ciliary part and the optic part, in that junction where the ciliary body will be continuous with the choroid, that junction is known as the ora serrata. Now you are clear about the ora serrata?
Ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Now, what are the layers of the retina? There are so many layers of the retina. You can see that this is the sclera, this is the sclera, this is the choroid, this is the retina pigment epithelium, which is more close to the choroid than to the retina. When the retina is detached, it is the pigment layer usually remains, but the other layers are detached. Okay, so after this pigment layer, there is a membrane that is, there is a layer that is known as the photoreceptor layer, and that is the layers of rods and cone, and there is one external limiting membrane. Then there are some other nuclei are present, that is the outer nuclear layer, the other plexiform layer. Then there will be the bipolar cell layer, that is the inner nuclear layer. Then towards the vitreous body, that is the inner plexiform layer. Ultimately, there will be the ganglion cell layer. And from that ganglion cell layer, the nerve fibers will come, that is the optic nerve fibers. And then they are covered by a layer, that is the external limiting membrane. So these are the 10 layers of the retina. Okay, that is the retina of a monkey. Okay, then this retina, I have told you that when we see the retina by an ophthalmoscope, you can see that an area, at the posterior pole, near the posterior pole, and that is known as the macula. And in the macula there will be a area which is very dark, and that is known as the fovea centralis. And in that fovea centralis, the acuity of the vision is very high, because there are rod cells are not present. Rod cells are for the dark light, dim light, and the cone cells are for the bright light. So these cone cells are present only. Only the cone cells are present in the center of the macula, that is known as the fovea centralis. And this is the optic disc through where the optic nerve fibers are coming out. Here no photoreceptor cells are present. So this area is also known as the blind spot. And at the center, you can see that at the center, the central artery of retina and the vein, the vein will come out and artery will enter, and they enter through the nerve fibers of the optic nerve. And you can see in light that through the ophthalmoscope you can see what is this? What are these? These are the branches of the central artery of the retina. So through the center of the optic disc they enter, and they supply the inner layer of the inner layers of the retina. The outer layers will be supplied by the ciliary arteries. Now, that is the macula, fovea centralis. The macula is 3 mm temporal to the optic disc, that is close to the posterior pole of the kidney. The optic disc is about 1.5, and the optic nerve, it is continuous, it is enclosed by the meninges, that is the sclera, pia, and arachnoid. That is sclera outside, arachnoid, then pia. And the sclera is continuous with the sclera, dura. So the optic nerve, it is lined by the meninges, that is the dura, arachnoid, and pia. And the sclera is continuous with the dura of the optic nerve. And that is the retina, that what structure we were showing, that is the retina through the ophthalmoscope. This is the ophthalmoscopic view. Now, the blind spot is that is the optic nerve is the blind spot, and in our visual field is a binocular, and there are also optic spots, blind spots are present. But normally we cannot perceive this blind spot because we have a binocular vision, and the one object cannot be present in the two blind spots at a time. So we cannot see. So to see the blind spot, we have to close one eye. then we can see the blind spots of the other eye. Okay, but that is you can see in that where in the department of ophthalmology. Okay, so that is the blind spots are also present in our visual field. So I am coming to the end. And in case of glaucoma, that is when the pressure is increased, then they will compress the vessels, and the vessels will be narrower, and they cannot supply the nerve fibers. So nerve fibers will die, and there will be the optic cup will be more white. So that is the optic cup size will be more in case of glaucoma because of this increased intraocular pressure. Then the arterial supply of the retina, that is the retina has 10 layers, and the inner layer that is towards the vitreous body, that is the inner layers, they will be supplied by the central artery of the retina, central artery and the central vein, and the outside that will be supplied by the ciliary arteries. The outer layers will be supplied by the ciliary arteries. Okay, now here you can see that these are the layers, these are the outer layers that will be supplied by the ciliary arteries of the choroid, and where the bipolar cells are present, there it is supplied both by the ciliary arteries as well as by the central artery, and the inner layer that will be supplied by the central retinal artery. Thank you.